I call this meeting to order at 9 o'clock. Mayor Pro Tem Ibarra will lead us in the flag salute.
Will you all please stand, face the flag?
The right hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
You may be seated. City Clerk, roll call, please.
Mayor Lopez,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Ibarra,
Present.
Councilmember Davis.
Here.
Councilmember Menke.
Here.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. City Clerk, do we have any changes to the agenda?
There are none.
May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Move.
I'll second.
Motion by Councilmember Davis, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Ibarra to approve the agenda. Mayor Lopez.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Ibarra.
Yes.
Councilmember Davis.
Yes.
Councilmember Menke.
Yes.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Now we will take public comment from members of the audience. At this time, the public is encouraged to address the city council on any matter that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city council. The public will also be given a chance to comment on matters which are on the posted agenda during the city council's deliberation on those specific matters. Is there any public comment? Seeing that there are none, we will now go on to, I'm sorry. Please state your name and business affiliation, if any, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Absolutely. Is this on? Oh, there we go. Okay. Good morning, City Council.
morning.
Good
Mayor,
morning.
And staff. Today is our first official City Council meeting with the Los Angeles County Fire Department. And Rosemary Vivero, your community service liaison. So I want to take that opportunity to introduce you to your new fire prevention staff. And Chief Stillwagon, if you'd like to introduce your staff, just so that you could put the names and the faces together.
Thank you.
Morning, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having us today. It's a pleasure to be a part of your city. We're really looking forward to working with the team here. We've had a great experience and a good transition so far, and just happy to report that business continuity is on pace and going well. We've had 0 problems, so this is a good thing. I'd like to introduce Captain Joe Williams. He's going to be here 3 days a week and representing the Fire Prevention Division. I will also be here 4 days a week. We have Firefighter Specialist Fernandez, who just joined our team on November 1. Then we have Firefighter Specialist Harris, who joined our team on November 1. And then we have Firefighter Specialist Ortiz, who joined our team November 1st. So we're going to be training them kind of to the unique aspects of the city, and then they'll be out there performing inspections in about 3 weeks. We brought in another senior inspector to fill that gap, and we still have one of your inspectors working with our team also. So just happy to meet you and happy to report on that, and we look forward to working with the city.
Thank you and
Thank
welcome.
you. Welcome.
Welcome.
And then quickly, one of your battalion chiefs from the B shift is here, Chip Gamble or William Gamble. So again, I know it's hard to see the face under the mask, but again, it's just an introduction. So you put the name and the face together. So, or the mask together.
Yeah.
So, and that was it. I just want to make sure that you get to see the names and the faces. So
Well, thank you for that.
Thank you. Welcome,
Thank
everybody.
you. Do we have any other for public comments? Seeing that there are none, we will now go on to the presentation item number 1.
Item number 1 is presentation of citywide enterprise resource planning system. And Finance Director Williams will present the report.
Yes, good morning, Honorable Mayor, honorable members of the City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to present this morning for informational purposes and overview of the benefits of an enterprise resource planning system. So given the scope of the project, the city administrator felt that it would be prudent to introduce this technology infrastructure upgrade before making an actual recommendation for several reasons. And the first is this project is a major undertaking, and it will actually span several years in its deployment. Secondly, this represents a significant investment on the part of the city, and that goes without saying, and that's not just fiscal resources, but that's time as well as staff. And finally, the comprehensive nature of this project will span every department within the city. So this short presentation is meant to be interactive, so please stop me at any time for either clarification or comment of either a technical term or concept. So with that, we will begin with the definition of an ERP. So what is an ERP system? That term, it's a commonly used term in our present time, and it stands for Enterprise Resource Planning System. So in the past, we primarily used, as you know, a financial system or maybe even an accounting system with several different subsystems with different processes for input into that main system. But over really the long term of the last couple of decades, and specifically over the last 5 to 10 years, technology as well as bandwidth has enabled much more, as we'll see in a few upcoming slides. So now we refer to a system rather than a financial system. We refer to a system that actually spans the full business enterprise of the city. And this is the management of human as well as fiscal resources. So what that results in is an integrated suite of modules. And we'll get into some of the particulars of these, but they include what you would expect. Budget and finances at the core, but this also includes all disbursements, payroll, accounts payable, human resource management, but also land use, licensing, permits, inspections, as well as internally work orders and asset management and utility billing. So what a fully integrated system does, what it results in is it facilitates the flow across all business functions of the city in one consolidated place. So it's a centralized database. That's the difference here versus what we call disparate systems. And then of course there's a common look and feel across all modules. So when a user goes in, I would liken it to a web browser. You go to one web page versus another, and yes, they're different, but there's similarities just based on standardization. That's what you get with a centralized database and a consolidated system. And then also importantly, just looking to the future, it promotes all of this information access without taxing IT resources. In fact, all you need is access to the internet to use a cloud-based system, which is what we will be recommending. So how does an ERP do this? So in this illustration, we have current versus future processes. So these are just for illustration purposes only, but what we have on the left versus the right are the same business activities, but done in radically and essentially different ways. So on the left, we have the current processes, again, versus this concept of a consolidated database. So you see there the idea of a financial system. And then, so for instance, our budget, it is Excel based. It's a bunch of Excel files, and it's very labor intensive. It's not impossible. It's not as bad as it could be by any stretch, but this is, it is a lot of work getting that into the financial system. Payroll and timekeeping, inventory, license and permits, HR, utility billing, all of that. Every one of these functions currently have manual processes. In some cases, we're literally duplicating 100% of the process from one department to another because of the limitations of our current system. And
They're
even though
basically standalones, right?
that
goes into one eventually.
Yes, so if you have a subsystem, it's standalone and it's brought into the new one. But in other cases, we actually have, technically the system we have is an ERP, but it is at end of life. I mean, it was great. It represented advancement of the city, but that's over 10 years ago, and that's a very long time in technology. And so that was, in that case, you have a process like business license that originates in the current system, but it still requires manual processes. And so some of those are, so we mentioned there, separate systems, paper-driven. So even where we're doing things paperless, we're manually scanning paper. And that, again, that's improvement, but that's not a final finished product. Manual process, duplication of time, and then of course, extended report timing. So this is a big one that we'll touch on later, but just to be able to do a quick analysis or report in a timely manner, it takes some work because we have to run around and update what is residing in these other systems or other processes. Versus on the right, you have just the illustration of bidirectional information flow. So at the hub, rather than a finance system, you have a consolidated ERP database. And so what happens in one system is reflected immediately in another. So it cuts across the whole platform. And I mentioned at the last slide that it radically changes how we go about work and access of information. Results in a fully integrated system. It's workflow driven. Workflow can be described as task management, where rather than having to keep a list or a folder or even electronic versions of that, the system prompts the user for next action. And this is a big one for how we work across different departments: automation, single input, and real-time reporting. Real-time reporting means we can be in the middle of a disbursements batch or even receiving cash or something else, and it's actually immediately reflected in the system even before it's posted. So that represents a big improvement. So impact on our processes. We have an example in the left column, how we currently do work here at the city, and then what an ERP enables. So some of these, as previously mentioned, the non-integrated systems, it results in limited online processes for customers. Physical processes, we literally still have to use paper and mail. Specialized spreadsheets, and while spreadsheets can be very sophisticated, and there can be a lot of skill on the part of the user, it was never meant to be a final finished product. It's meant for analysis. And then again, duplication of work. But what is possible, what can get us into 21st century standards very quickly, is a fully integrated versus disparate systems, internet-based customer portal. So this is customers as well as the vendors. We'll have a internet-based portal, and this is for not just payments, but account access. So someone can go in and look at a water usage, for instance, in comparison to last year, and hopefully know when there's a problem before a span of time. Permits and inspections. This is a major component of this land use, where you will have the ability to initiate the permitting process by setting up an account, just like we do any of our bill pays, that type of interface, and initiate that process. Plans will be not physically sent over like an email, but actually uploaded. They will be reviewed and marked up, and all of this done electronically and without someone ever having to step foot in City Hall. And the customer will be able to see the progress just by logging on. So that's a big part of this implementation. There's automation of data input, and of course that comes through just diffusing some of this activity out, whether it be payments or input on the part of departments. Again, just a real change in how we do business. And then that real-time integration between modules. And I mentioned paperless record keeping. Yes, on the one hand, you have paperless similar to what we're doing now, where you can drill into, you can very quickly access what's behind a transaction. But also, whether it be payroll or anything else, it's actually generated by the system. So there never is a piece of paper. And this moves us very quickly in this direction. Any questions before I move on? Okay. Okay, impact on information. So this is when we are actually, the work is done. What do we do with the information? It shifts us to a more analytical focus. We mentioned their dashboard and use the term KPI or key performance indicators versus running specialized reports. So what you wind up with, and there's just kind of a screen print of what a dashboard looks like. And the modern concept is one, so this is a web browser and you have tiles and it can just tell you, there can be a number there telling me how many items are waiting for me to go in and approve. So for myself, I just leave that running in a window, but you can also, it also has mobile capability. And in terms of key performance indicators at a high level, whether it be the administrator, directors, managers can have access to the things that are important for them to look at without ever having to run a report. And that's a major conceptual difference in how we do business now. There's no delay. We've mentioned that. And also, the decentralized approach. So this, of course, will result in improved customer service to the business community. And, on that note, I mentioned a major part of this is the land use component. And a little over a year ago, some major decisions were made with service to the business community and retaining an in-house based process for doing these. And this is a mechanism for enabling us to perform at the expected level and fulfill that. Again, we've mentioned up-to-date information as well as, I like this one, budget data integrity and version control or lack of version crisis, because you're not doing things. It's a system that is continuously updating versus having to go in and make a last-minute change. And it results in improved review and revision, just a better work product overall. So what will this look like to staff? This will have some very positive impacts with how we go about doing our work and ultimately our service delivery to the business and residential communities. And it does that with a familiar and what you might call user-friendly interface. So you're spending less time getting the information and more time thinking and analytical activity. Global search functions. Again, you'll be able to, if you just in a global search looked up a business, for instance, you would see every touch point of the entire city where that business involved, whether it's a business license, a permit of some sort, utility bill. This enables a greater collaboration just based on the information flow across departments. Simplified, streamlined process, and collecting and entering data once. So, and this too, in terms of internal controls, that last point, this is our opportunity with the new system to integrate policy and business rules into the system. So there are a few things outside of technology that will improve both internal controls and efficiency at the same time. And this is one of those opportunities. So if we have things that are driven by policy or perhaps a municipal code, we build that into the business process. And that's why it doesn't just happen in a few months. It's a long process, careful process of implementation and just deployment. And finally, in closing, the real purpose of an ERP is to advance the city's strategic goals. And we do that by we're leveraging technology to improve both internal and external customer service, modeling out long-term, data required for long-term fiscal sustainability. That's a big one for us, and of course, as always, to promote transparent and open government, just making that data available. So that concludes the kind of the conceptual introduction into an ERP, and we're available for any comments or questions or discussion.
Scott, I have a couple questions. I understand the ERP and everything and the means for it, but what does that do to the finance department itself? How is that going to change the finance department? Is it going to improve? Are you going to look at?
Without question, it represents improvement, both how the department functions as a department. So I mentioned there the ability to, it changes the way staff works. It isn't so much now the work has gone away. It's that there is less time spent processing and more time spent with available data to engage in value-added activity. So I mentioned there that last slide, when we're trying to model out long-term financial stability, it takes accurate information to do that. And the longer it takes, it just drags the whole process out. So internally, this enables finance to engage in very forward-oriented activity, but also improves the relationship across departments because it enables collaboration. There's just less questions of information flow. And that really goes for every department, because ultimately it's great to function well as an organization, but the application of that is service delivery to the community.
It seems to me like it's going to promote transparency, and there's less margin for error, because when you're taking from one system and going to another person, the two aren't talking to each other, basically. This is all going to be in one place, and the real-time reporting, I think, is so important, because now we have report dates, right? You need this report by this date, whereas every day it would be updating every time something was put in, right?
It's a point well taken, because you take a year like this year where we are monitoring with a level of frequency that under ordinary circumstances, we're always looking, don't get me wrong, but to actually work up monthly reports typically, but this takes a lot of the work out of that. You can know where you're at. I mean, we'll watch a revenue source like sales tax that could fluctuate a lot, and we can see that on an ongoing and continuous basis. The utilities activity, that's again something we're watching very carefully. And so rather than having to do a specialized spreadsheet to bring all of that into a report, it's integrated. And you're right, it is real time.
And access to various portions of it would be limited to your amount of responsibility, right?
That's right. And there's a whole very sophisticated security process, and you set up roles. The easiest way to do it in an organization with as many users as we have, you have certain levels that are appropriate for that role, whether it be an analyst, whether it be someone who's actually engaged in input. There's certain things that I would never be able to do because it would be a breach in the internal controls. I'm approving, so I really shouldn't have the ability to input necessarily. and there wouldn't be a reason to. So it's pretty robust in that respect. So access to a lot of information doesn't mean everybody's going to see everything by any stretch.
It just sounds very efficient to me, because when you get a report at the end of the month, it's already old, right? So that data doesn't do a whole lot for you if you had it on a daily basis, especially for the managers and department heads. I think it would be very beneficial.
This is a big one to me, and it gives staff the opportunity to grow and stretch and improve personally and professionally. Because again, we don't want more processing. We want to leverage technology to do that and allow more the improvement of an individual's skill set. That's the real contribution you're going to make to the city in the long term. And it requires information. And most of what we do is information.
It just appears that it's going to be easier rather than gathering everything. It's going to be there and then you can just analyze.
Yes, it does enable that. I always I get so excited about it. I do want to always issue the caveat that, you know, it's not like the Jetsons and it does the work for us, but it changes. It really changes fundamentally the way we do work. So it does. It enables analysis. That's what we need in terms of long-term financial planning. That's, of course, a big one for me, you know, is we're looking 5, 10, 20 years into the future, and we have to model all of that out.
Is there any further comments, questions? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
We will now go on to the consent calendar. All matters listed on the consent calendar are to be approved with one motion. Items may be removed from the consent calendar by any member of the council. Those items removed will be considered immediately after the consent calendar. Does the council wish to pull any items from the consent calendar?
Item number 10.
Are there any public comments for the consent calendar?
10.
Seeing that there are none, may I have a motion for the consent calendar, item numbers 2 through 9? I'll second.
Motion by Councilmember Davis, seconded by Mayor Lopez to approve the consent calendar with the exception of item number 10. Mayor Lopez?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Ibarra?
Yes.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Menke?
Yes.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Now, we will look at item number 10 from the consent calendar.
Yes, good morning again, Mayor and Council. So the item in the staff report is a service agreement with a BLX Group, LLC, for financial advisory services. So just by way of reminder and background, at the issuance of a bond, there's 3 major outside components. We have bond counsel. So of course, those are all the legal particulars, the actual indenture agreement of a bond. Then we have the investment bank. So this last go round, we had Goldman and JP Morgan. And then another major component is the financial advisory services. So financial advisory services could almost be likened to a project manager at the issuance of the bond. They're driving everything forward. They're monitoring the market. Even now, our advisory services are monitoring particularly a low interest rate environment to look for opportunities for repricing. And so that's what they do at issuance. And then post issuance, we have all of the ongoing and continuous compliance reporting. And that's a major component of what they perform for us. And that's the bulk of what is being recommended here. So for this process, we issued an RFP. And it was sent to, I believe, 10 firms. So this was handled through our purchasing department, reports directly to me. And we had 3 respondents. We had BLX Group, PFM, that's Public Financial Management Advisory, and Urban Futures. They're all competent and capable firms. And we had a weighting system. There were 3 of us who participated in addition to purchasing, who participated in this process. It was myself, finance manager, as well as a risk department. So we independently reviewed the proposals. We had rating sheets, and we came up with a scoring and discussion. So cost was only one part of it. The qualifications in terms of familiarity with the city and the complexity of our electric bonds was a big one. That held a lot of weight for me, in addition to pricing. So the successful farm in the recommendation to the council is BLX Group. Oh, one last thing. I'm sorry. I mentioned there in the staff report that if were a major bond issuance, there would be an addendum brought forward, just because the scope of work is beyond this, and so we don't want to run up against the limit that's being recommended.
BLX, you said it has familiarity with the city. Have we done business with them in the past?
Yes, they were our advisory services for these last 2 issuances this year. So for the electric and the water bond, they managed it for us, did a great job, saved the city a lot of money, and they are also performing. They have been, up until that time, or the last few years while they were in an active agreement, handling our compliance reporting.
Prior to that, though?
Prior to that, yes.
I mean, way back when, like, let's say 2010.
I think they may have been involved. Yes.
I'm just concerned that they blessed off on perhaps the prepaid gas agreement,
I'm sorry.
the prepaid gas agreement. I mean, those were the times that those things were going on, and that's kind of troublesome to me.
Yeah, and I don't know if on the gas agreement, if it was PFM or BLX at that time, because there was a period there where it switched, but so.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, but I think maybe it's something we should look into.
BLX was our consultant during the prepaid gas agreement. But again, they're not the ones that are making the recommendation. Ultimately, that decision to get made by the city, and the city gives a staff recommendation to city council, and council approves it. So they're not the ones that went out and did the deal. The deal was actually formed with Latham and Watkins.
That's one of my concerns.
Yeah, but Latham is not affiliated with BLX.
We've been with this firm, what, I think about 18 years?
No. We switched over to PFM in 2000 and
Like
12,
just after that,
13?
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and because BLX came back in like 3 years after that.
Right. So we had BLX, we changed firms, we went with PFM. We found that PFM was doing a great job for us, but they didn't have some of the history of some of the financial transactions that happened with the city. So we went back and hired BLX to come in and help us with the bond issuance recently over the last couple of years. So I think we've been with BLX for the last 3 years.
Yes, and they've been doing our compliance reporting.
And compliance reporting.
Mhm.
And prior to that, PFM did not handle our compliance reporting. I think in some shape, Jeff Higgins was helping Masami with some of the compliance reporting as well.
Yeah, because I mentioned the indenture. There's a whole array of things that have to be reported. And like at this time of year, this is when they hit because it's calendar. So that institutional knowledge is helpful to us. At the end of the day, we will make the recommendation. based on an assessment of the best interest of the city, and we'll always do that.
Of
I mean,
course.
my name is always going to be on it.
I guess I just would like to see, because they would give you a recommendation before you recommended it to us, correct? To the council.
Yes, well, and in this last, so the way the flow of activity in this last issuance, there were a couple of things that we were looking at. And it began with Abe and myself, and we spent a lot of time discussing why would we do this? Does this make sense? If there's not a certain amount of savings, it doesn't justify the time. And then finally, we get to an ultimate recommendation. We bring that to the administrator and discuss it further and say, okay, this is why we think this is the right direction. Then it actually engages with the market. And obviously there was crazy amount of volatility based on state of emergency. And it really came down to a last day on the water bond in particular, where we were ready to pull the deal because we just didn't feel it was in the best interest. And a day can make a big difference in the markets. And it literally swung $1 million in our favor. It made it worthwhile. So this isn't just, here's our recommendation, then we just sign it. There's a lot of evaluation that goes into it before that recommendation is made. But their expertise is as financial advisors who are engaged in the bond market on a daily basis. That's not something we have time to do. I watch the
Of course.
markets, but not the same.
I guess I just feel better if I knew, because there were a lot of bad decisions made back then. I guess I'd like to see what their recommendations were to the people then in your position and in Carlos's position before I feel comfortable going with this company again.
Okay.
It's a lot of money that we're going to be putting out.
I'm sorry, I don't understand that you want to know what they advised the city back in 2010
Right.
or 2008.
When we were not following reforms and good governance. I would like to see if they recommended to go with these deals that were just so outrageous back then. Does that make any sense? I mean, we don't want to get burned twice, do we?
I don't know if we can get into the details of what they recommended or how they recommended back in 2008. Those decisions were ultimately made by the city council, not by PFM or by BLX. They were ultimately made by the city council. Again, they are not here to tell us how to do things. They're here, we basically, we give them an idea, we tell them how we're going to do a transaction, and they come back and they structure it and they look at how we structure a certain transaction and say, this will work with what your model is, and this will work with model X, Y, or Z. For example, Abraham can discuss how we bring in the rate decision model to BLX. For example, we're going to raise rates. We show them what we're trying to do, and then they help us formulate a plan so that we can execute that plan with the public. But as far as them just creating ideas or recommendations, I don't think we have anything from them. I mean, we could go back and look, but you're going back to 2008, 2009. It would be very difficult to find out if there's any hard written recommendations from BLX. I could tell you that we did switch from BLX to PFM, and we tried PFM because PFM was a financial institution that was advising all SCAPA members. And we had issues with PFM, which I won't get into at this point, but we decided at that point, a couple of years ago, to go back to BLX because they had the institutional knowledge. Now, the state auditor did come into the city of Vernon in 2000 and I want to say it was in 2010 or 11, and they looked at all the I could provide that to city council for them to review, which was, there was an interview that happened with BLX and some of the information that they provided to the city for some of the contracts that you're referring to. But it's my recollection that there wasn't specific information, even with the state auditor that came in to look at that contract. So it was very general, and they'll take the position, hey, we're here to advise you. We're here to work with the city on what you want, and you tell us how you want to get to Z, and we'll tell you how to get there. Abe, do you want to add anything?
Not really. I mean, as far as Bill Licks being advisor, they've been advising us for many years, of course. But just to add to what Scott was saying, we come up with the idea. Basically, we tell them, we want to do this. In the last bond issuance, we came up with the idea of water and electric. We told them, does this make sense? They go out and study the market and give us information about what they see in the market. They come back to us, and we sat together in a conference room, and we decided we want to go ahead and do the project. So their services are limited to monitoring the market, collecting data, and just basically summarizing where things stand today. That's the extent. And basically, it's the city staff and city administration, to make what decisions to be carried out.
Thank you.
So yeah, I would like to see some of that information, Carlos, that you could come up with for us.
Is that the wish of city council to get information on the BLX contract?
It's just
What
if we-
information is being asked? I want to understand what information is being asked. I just need to know what information you guys are asking for.
It's my understanding that the request is being made to see how BLX advised the city with some of these deals in the past, what their advice was to the city with some of the contracts that we had in place.
Correct.
And quite honestly, I just think I don't know what I'll find, but I can refer back to the state auditor's report, which it's on our website, but I'll go back and look and see what the state auditor found, because the state auditor did audit BLX. They brought him in, they interviewed him, and they went through some of the decision-making that was done at that time.
Just so I understand, you guys are asking for a time frame, or is it overall?
No, overall.
Overall?
Any specific projects that you're looking at? Because this is very broad.
This will help staff narrow it down for you, so.
I'm just looking basically from my perspective, like prepaid gas, PTTA, Kern County, any of those, whether they were involved, I don't know. The name just sounded familiar to me. I haven't had a chance to really give it much research. But I think it would be, I'm probably being picky, but I think it'd be worth taking a look at.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, what we'll do is, if I have the council's consensus on this, what we'll do is we'll pull this agenda item, we'll table it, and we'll bring it back at the next meeting, and I'll give you a little bit of history of what I can find, if that's the direction from council.
I'd appreciate that.
But real quick, just to narrow down, because I've seen stuff being pulled and give you direction, and then you were asked again at the next meeting. If you have anything particular you're looking at, other than just the PTA, Kern County,
Those
Any
are the three that I'm
information
gonna
right
focus
now?
on.
Yes.
just the two?
I'm gonna
Good.
focus on the PPTA, Kern County, and prepaid gas.
Thank you.
Are we tabling it to the next meeting? Or how much
That's-
time do you
That's
need?
the discretion of city council. You have the right to do that, or if there's another, however
that-
you want to handle
Will
it. as
that
a
give you
group.
enough time, Carlos? Will that give you enough time?
Yes.
Where are we at with approving this? Are we like, we have to do it now, or do we have a couple months?
We don't have a couple months. That I will say, we have compliance reporting. It's this kind of got pushed out because originally, because I didn't have as much history, I had actually made a recommendation to city administrator. I had written a memo making the recommendation based on sole source, because I felt like we have this need. We're required per indenture to get these reports done. And that's what they've been performing for us. And then, of course, I mean, a lot of things have happened this year, but it was brought back to me, though, hey, we need to go through the whole RFP process and give this a fair look, which we did. And so, as I mentioned at the beginning, they're all competent firms, but the other two were quite general compared with what BLX has to offer. So there is an urgency. I don't want to overplay that hand, but there is an urgency just based on this time of year. And I guess I would just also mention that the advisor is just one component. I mentioned there's an investment bank, trying to sell you, and they're, or put the bond deal together. There are, there's bond counsel involved. And then there's the potential, and I wasn't here and I don't know any who were involved, but there are city staff who could be saying, I want this deal. And the advisor at the end of the day is probably going to say, okay, if you want to issue a bond for that, we're going to issue a bond for that. So it's not, I'm just mentioning that as kind of a footnote to all of this. They're just one component in all of this. I think what they recommend is pretty objective. It's a bond deal. We come with the recommendation of whether this makes sense to the city.
Scott, I don't think the city council understands the actual role of the financial advisor. Can you elaborate on the actual role versus what the role of the city is?
So, as city administrator mentioned, we have some sort of purpose. So in the case of the water system, we had an aging water system and we were dependent on Met water. It's just getting more and more expensive. And so we needed to address the infrastructure. And so that was going to require a revenue stream. These are revenue bonds that we're issuing. So there has to be some revenue source in order to do so. So we come up with a plan to address rates to be able to service that debt. So when we get to that point, and so we hire an outside firm to do that, because again, that's specialized, modeled out. And similarly, a similar activity is the financial advisor who takes that vision or that purpose or that project that you're looking to. It could be building a public building or something of that nature. And they are, I mentioned, they're like the project manager. So they're going out there and they're looking at the spread between treasuries and munis, which we would be issuing, of taxable versus not taxable. I'm hard pressed to see where it would ever be in the best interest of a financial advisor to recommend a bad deal knowingly.
Can I add to that? So for example, the prepaid gas, when the city entered the prepaid gas, it was facing a difficult time because the amount of the gas prices were escalating, and the city had just built this power plant and they didn't have an avenue to keep that power plant running. So what they did was they put together a deal to go out and prepay for this gas for, I think it was 15 or 20 years. Now, BLX's role in that was to go out in the market and help us with the numbers, the spreads and all that. It was the city's direction to go out and do the prepaid gas. The deal was actually called, and there's an article that was written about the deal, is the deal of the century, because the deal went out prior to fracking. What what really set the deal in a spiral was fracking. When fracking hit us a couple of years later, gas prices plummeted because now you had an abundance of gas that hit the market. So while they were evaluating this deal, you're not going to see something from someone saying, hey, this is not a good idea to hedge this much gas on your prepay. In fact, they felt that gas prices were going up. And I believe, and I might be incorrect, but I think Hurricane Katrina hit right around that time and prices soared over $12. So Abe and I were involved on some aspect of that. So you saw the market in gas go above $12, $13, and the city panicked because the city said, wait a minute, if gas continues to rise at this price, we can't run this plant at our margin. So the city went out and did a prepaid gas at $7.50.
It's in the neighborhood of 7.
The actual, cost of the gas is just under, $5 for 72, just about, 475. But with the cost of financing,
Right.
it went up to 650 and a couple of refinancing following it, finally, got to the 750 level.
So, at the time, that's just one aspect of the deal. Then if you look at the PPTA and that structure, you got to understand the thought process back then when the city entered into the PPTA, they never ever envisioned getting to the latter years of that contract, which was 2017 and on, because they knew that contract had a hockey stick financing where the price we would be paying for power would be extraordinarily high. And that's where we are right now. The thought process, and you can go back and look at, we could go back and look at it, and there was a presentation given to City Council sometime in 2007, I believe, 2008. The thought I'm sorry, 2010, I believe, because this was after the city sold the power plant. The thought process was the city would liquidate all assets in the utility. It was called Project Volt. And Project Volt was it was presented by Eric Fresh to the city council. And that was a deal that he felt could leverage the assets in the utility, sell off all the assets to a pre-retirement firm in Canada, and they would take over the operation of the utility here in Vernon, and the city could lease for the rights to the electricity in Vernon, because they knew that there was no way to pay at that time with the current revenues for the future cost of the PPTA. In 2011, we addressed that directly with the community, and we said, listen, we have an issue that's growing. The only way to solve this is to raise rates. And that was something that Eric Fresh did not want to do, as well as the time it was Donald O'Callaghan. They did not want to raise rates to the levels that we had to raise rates in order to pay for this PPTA. I felt it was the only way that we could eventually pay for the contract and in the latter years without liquidating the utility. So decisions at the time of that they were made, not all the facts are basically presented to you, and you have to change course as you go on. And then Kern County was always a deal that, remember, this, I think this LADWP could not move fast enough in purchasing this property. And because the city council was able to move quickly and quicker than LA, they were able to get in, buy the property, and flip it and sell the NextEra portion, which you all visited. So again, BLX's recommendations at the time were probably favorable to the city because they said, hey, look, you can get in, get out, you can flip this property and earn money fairly quickly. they didn't know the consequences later on of, you know, the additional property that we would have that basically NextEra didn't want. Because essentially the city tried to sell that portion of the land during that time, but NextEra didn't want that land. They just wanted the 17,000 acres to build their project. So going back and looking at what their recommendations are. Again, I can go and look at what the state auditor's report said, because the state auditor did come in and look at all, you know, what their recommendations were. And I recall very vividly sitting in that meeting and BLX saying, do you want me to create a spreadsheet? Because we don't have anything that we can show you. And they were like, no, we don't want you to create something. We want to see if there's anything that was already created. And I remember that being an issue because they were saying, look, a lot of our discussions were done directly with Eric Fresh at the time and the city council. And I think BLX came and talked to the city council at that time. So that's a little bit of the history of understanding like how these deals were formulated. Again, the PPTA, it was never intended. Eric Fresh's vision was to never keep that contract. He wanted to liquidate the assets of the utility, sell off the utility, and or build Vernon Power Plant, which was going to be over at the the Alcoa site. You want to add anything, Abe?
No, I think you covered, I know, Carlos covered, you know, the entire history. So just to add to what, you know, as Scott was saying, the financial advisors, you know, as far as I remember, BLX has been mainly focused on what's called the disclosure report. What that does is, you know, just basically tracks what the city is doing in compliance with the bond indenture and reporting, you know, the information on a yearly basis. That's been their responsibility. I think that's what, you know, Scott needs the most at this point. We're not thinking about, you know, issuing bonds as of yet. The market's not there. So that is the function they have always covered. As far as the advisory service of it, I think their role is going to, you know, basically, depend on what the city's vision was and is. You know, even the last, you know, bond, you know, issuance, you know, we did, you know, a year ago, we formulated the plan, and we told them, give us your review of this. Go study the market. Does this make sense? Is this the right time? Do we have, you know, what they call, you know, what Scott referred to as the margin? Do we have that, you know, market for us, you know, to do the bond at this point? That's what they do. They are, you know, basically they are in the bond market. They know the bond market. So they go out and study the market and tell us the timing and, you know, the price, you know, where, you know, we should be looking at. Otherwise, the, you know, information about, you know, what to do, you know, in terms of, you know, project decisions, that all relies on the city officials.
I think I'd just say one last thing on the gas deal about knowing now what wasn't necessarily known then. Fundamentals do change radically. And so the city was taking a variable cost that was skyrocketing, and they fixed it because you're trying to hit a margin, particularly in utility. This many revenues over this many expenditures, except these expenditures were just rising and nobody saw that. The mention there, Carlos, that fracking or that we would have years on end with the Fed window at 0%. Nobody foresaw these events. And so it is easy to look back and think something doesn't look like as favorable a deal or not favorable at all, or even a bad deal. But at the time, there's been a tremendous number of unforeseen events in the last 10 years that have changed they've just changed the way we look at finance. So.
But as it was so aptly put, the people that make the final decision is the city council. And I think we need more information.
Okay, you got 2 weeks, right?
So is there a motion to table the item and direct staff to bring back information on BLX's advice for the 3 projects mentioned?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Menke, seconded by Councilmember Davis to table the item. Mayor Lopez?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Ibarra?
Yes.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Menke?
Yes.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Yes.
Motion carries.
We will now go on to new business, item number 11.
Item 11 is Greater Los Angeles County Vector Control District Annexation Number 2019-07. Health and Environmental Control Director Agent will present the report.
He's missing.
He's remotely
Okay.
presenting.
I'm here. Good morning. Can you guys see me?
No.
We sent you the invite. I think you need to click yes on there.
Like, yes.
We see you now.
Okay. Good morning, Honorable Mayor and City Council.
Morning.
The item before you is a recommendation to adopt the resolution. This is basically the final step for the city being annexed by Greater Los Angeles County Vector Control District to provide vector control services to the city. So this has been a long time process. It's been almost 4 years when the council originally passed a resolution for Greater Los Angeles to annex the city and provide that and technical know-hows on how to deal with vector control issues. So basically, the fiscal impact on this is going to be what the vector control district is going to do. It would be a $12.79 per parcel, which equate to an annual revenue to Greater Los Angeles of about $16,000. That is really a great and big significant savings for the city for vector control doing that work. So staff recommend that the council approve this recommendation. And like I mentioned earlier, this will be the final step for the annexation to go through. So I will stop here and if council have questions for staff.
Does the council have any technical questions for staff?
Freddie, how is the tax going to be, how is this charge going to be collected? By taxes or how?
Yeah, so it will be part of the taxes. That's correct.
Does council have any further questions for staff? Are there any public comments? Seeing that there are none, may I have a motion for item number 11?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Councilmember Menke, seconded by Councilmember Gonzalez to adopt flipped the page too soon. To adopt a joint resolution of the Board of Supervisors related to vector control. Mayor Lopez?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Ibarra?
Yes.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Menke?
Yes.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Now we will go on to oral reports. City Administrator Fandino, do you have a report?
On October 22nd, Vernon Police Department witnessed a male attempting to steal the Halloween inflatables in front of City Hall. The suspect fled and was detained by officers nearby and was charged with resisting arrest, attempted theft, and a misdemeanor for Vernon vandalism. On October 24th, Vernon Police Department arrested a male in the area of District and Downey for grand theft auto. October 30th, monitor a public demonstration held at Farmer John in the afternoon by the animal activist concerns with the spread of COVID-19 at the facility. The demonstration lasted approximately 2 hours and ended peacefully with no enforcement required. On November 1st, while monitoring the building at 5610 Alcoa for reoccurring graffiti, Vernon Police Department officers arrested 4 suspects for the trespassing, and one possessed a no bail Vernon warrant. Fire transition has been spectacular, knock on wood. We have been diligent in our response to the community, and there's been no incidents reported. Public Works Department, as mentioned in last week's council update, the Public Works Street Division recently renovated the street island on District Boulevard near Atlantic and Boulevard. And if you could see the island up on the screen. The renovations of the district island included freshening up with the Welcome to Vernon monument sign, updating the irrigation system, and removing the existing dating landscape and replacing it with more contemporary, drought tolerant, low maintenance landscaping. Also noted in the update were additional cleanup efforts undertaken by Public Works personnel. A code violation was addressed at the Vernon business of Soto Street. Before and after photos. Hopefully we have them. So up on the top right there, you can see the property owner was handed a code violation and asked to clean up the property, and you can see the before and after pictures. Personnel addressed excess litter and debris reported at the Bank of America parking lot on Santa Fe, and I believe we do have before and after pictures of the cleanup. Dan, can you come up and talk to City Council on the Arroyo Group and some of the one-on-one meetings that they'll be having with City Council next week?
Yes. Next Thursday. So the Arroyo Group, as part of their West Side specific plan, wants to meet with community stakeholders. City Council members are very important stakeholders in this process. And so through Lily and Carlos's office, we're going to be setting up one-on-one interviews with you that can either be in person or via Zoom. We're shooting for the 12th, which is a week from next Thursday. If that doesn't work out, Lily will try to arrange for an alternate time and place to meet with all of you. Again, these can be done in person or they can be done via Zoom, whatever the council's preference is.
In order to prepare council for these meetings, can you tell them some of the discussions that they may be having or what to be prepared for?
Yes. So basically, they're going to try to find out what your vision is for the West Side, what future development is that you would like to see, what your concerns might be about future development. And so I can provide you guys with background of presentations that have previously been made to the council to kind of refresh your memories. We'll send that out to you via email. So,
questions about that? Thank you, Dan.
Yep.
Okay. Veronica's not here from health, so I'll skip that. City Clerk, Vernon Book Drive. The City of Vernon is now accepting donations for used books to stock the little libraries. Used books may be dropped in marked bins at City Hall now through November 30th. Vote centers and drop boxes. You may go to LA Vote to find the closest vote center where you can vote in person or find a vote by mail box, which are open to 8 p.m. today. City staff will be allowed to go vote today and may be dismissed early depending on department by department. Thank you to the City Council for your participation on the city's Halloween festivities. Raffles were conducted for the residents who shared photos of the decorated doors and Halloween costumes with city admin staff via email and text. Prizes for the raffle winners and candy delivery took place on the afternoon of October 29th. Photos from the Halloween goodie bag raffle prize delivery event, along with our resident entries, will be posted on our social media this week. reminder that next week, the city has a business and industry commission meeting, which is scheduled for Thursday, November 12th at 9 a.m. That's concludes, I think, my report.
Are there any reports from, oh, go ahead, Carlos. Does that conclude your report, Carlos?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Are there any reports from council? We will now go on to closed session for agenda item number 12. Thank you.